All right, so I know what you're probably already thinking, and I was thinking the same thing too at first, but this Venu X1, it's actually kind of different. So if you were to put a Garmin Fenix, a Forerunner 970, as well as their Venu SQ, but make it thinner and lighter, and also put in their largest display yet, well, you'd get this, the Venu X1. And the Venu X1 brings in a lot of features from those devices, like their 5th gen heart rate sensor, it has tons of training feedback and sports capabilities, and it even has a sapphire lens, as well as even the built-in LED flashlight. Now, another thing that you may notice, there's some similarities to another watch that's on the market, and I definitely see it too, but I think it's probably good to remember that Garmin has had square watches before, going all the way back to the original Vivo Active, which actually came out around the same time as the original Apple Watch. Alright, so we have a lot to cover in this video because this is kind of different than anything that Garmin's done before, but if you do happen to find the information in this video to be useful, do me a quick favor and hit that like button down below. It's a small thing that you can do that'll help this video and the channel out quite a bit, and I appreciate it. Okay, so first up, the name, the Venu X1, and it was kind of an interesting decision for Garmin to put this in their Venu series line of watches. And for a little bit of context, so Garmin has their uber premium Fenix line of watches. Then they have their Forerunner line of watches, which uses less materials, but actually still has plenty of the same sports capabilities. Then they have their Venu series line of watches, which focus more on the smartwatch capabilities, but dial back some of the sports capabilities. But this kind of blends a lot of those things together. And after we talk about what this does have, as well as doesn't have, I think putting it into their Venu series line of watches does actually kind of make sense. And then for price, by the way, this runs $799, which is way more than any other Venu has ever been in the past, but it also does come with a lot more. Okay, so for the case, so the X1 is 41 millimeters wide and it's 46 millimeters tall, but get this, it's just 7.9 millimeters thick, and this is kind of hard to believe until you see it in person. So for some context, so the Forerunner 970 is 12.9 millimeters thick, which is already a pretty thin watch itself, but this is like 30% thinner. It's kind of crazy. Now, compared to the Apple Watch Ultra, so the Ultra, I believe, is like 14.4 millimeters thick. And then again, seeing these side by side, it's kind of a big difference here. And then the main case on this is made out of plastic, but they actually chose to put a titanium backplate on here, which I think was kind of interesting. However, another thing that's kind of hard to take in is the weight, where this is just like 40 grams with the band. And they chose to put a nylon band on here, which is very similar to their Ultra Fit band, but they're calling this one their Comfort Fit band. And basically it has a lot of similarities, like it has the same Velcro and the same stretchiness and stuff like that. But this is not a quick fit band, which uses quick fit pins like their Forerunner 970 as well as their Fenix line of watches. This just has an industry standard watch band pinned interface. And then for the display, so this has a 2-inch display with 448 by 486 pixels, and for comparison, the Apple Watch Ultra has a 1.9-inch display with 410 by 502 pixels. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities here. Now, this does have a square display, which is definitely different than the majority of Garmin watches out there, but again, Garmin does have square watches like their Venu SQ, but this does differ from their Forerunner and Fenix line watches, which have round displays. But the big difference here is going to be with stuff like maps, where there's just going to be more information on the screen. And we'll talk about those maps here in just one bit. But another thing that they're bringing from their Fenix lineup, as well as their recent 970, is a sapphire lens. So this is just going to be a lot more worry-proof when it comes to scratches. But do know that one of the biggest differences between their Fenix lineup as well as the 970, which have metal bezels around the outside to kind of protect the display, this doesn't have that metal bezel. And this is also going to be different than the Apple Watch Ultra, which also does have metal surrounding the display on the edges. And then for battery life, so they say that the X1 can last up to 8 days if you're not using the always-on display, but if you choose to use the always-on display mode, that lasts up to 2 days at that point. So there's definitely some compromises when it comes to this huge display as well as this thin a case. Now, when it comes to battery life for recording outdoor activities, they say that this can last up to 7 hours in their highest accuracy mode and then up to 16 hours in their GPS only mode. But do note that this does not come with a multi-band satellite chipset like usually comes on their Fenix line as well as their higher end Forerunners. Now, having a multi-band satellite chipset definitely can yield better accuracy in certain environments, like around really tall buildings as well as like heavy tree cover and tall canyon walls. But unless you're really doing a lot of activities in those sort of conditions, a single band chipset will do you just fine. And Garmin's single band chipsets have proven to be pretty darn accurate. And then for getting around the device, so this has a touchscreen along with 2 physical buttons. And this is where choosing a Venu name does really make a lot of sense, where the Venu series line of watches has more reliance on using the touchscreen and it has less physical buttons than their Forerunner series as well as their Fenix line of watches. And some of us may prefer using a touchscreen versus buttons, but some of us also may prefer using buttons versus the touchscreen. But buttons can be more convenient in some sports scenarios, like let's say if your hands are wet or sweaty, where using a touchscreen can kind of be finicky, or if you even had gloves on. But with the X1, you'll use the touchscreen to get around most of the device, and then with the upper right hand button, so this is going to act as more like your select or enter button, and then the lower right hand button acts as your back button, but basically everything else you'll do with the touchscreen. And then for another huge feature they brought from their Fenix lineup as well as their recent 970, this does have a built-in LED flashlight right here, and this is one of those features that it's kind of hard to appreciate how useful it is until you actually have it. And it's not just for like getting around the house in the middle of the night. This also can be useful outdoors, of course, for seeing, but also for safety as well. Now, the Apple Watch Ultra does actually have a flashlight feature with the display, which is definitely useful, but it's not quite as useful as the built-in LED flashlight on the Venu X1, as well as their 970 and Fenix line of watches. And then just like the Fenix 8, as well as their recent 570 and 970, the X1 also does come with a built-in speaker and microphone. So this is where you can take calls on the watch itself, as long as your phone is in range. But do note that this does not have cellular capabilities like the Apple Watch Ultra does. But with that built-in microphone and speaker, you can also use it to access the voice assistant of your choice, for like Siri or Google Assistant. And there's also a voice command feature where you can like set timers and alarms. And then the X1 also does have the capability of downloading music from streaming services like Spotify as well as Amazon Music for offline listening with a pair of Bluetooth headphones when your phone is not in range. So this is where you'll be able to like go on your run or your bike ride without necessarily having to bring your phone with you. But additionally, you can also listen to music using the built-in speaker. And then for storage, so this has 32 gigabytes of storage for both music as well as maps. And I guess let's now talk about maps. And this is yet another feature that they brought down from their Fenix lineup as well as their 970s. And having maps on this 2-inch display does kind of make a difference here. So these full color offline topo maps not only give you context of your location, but it also comes with a lot of navigation capabilities like on-demand routing, where you can actually choose points of interest and it actually can generate directions for you on the fly with actual turn notifications like turn left here or turn right here. And it can even generate suggested routes for you on the fly. Let's say you're in a location where you're not really familiar, like right now I'm actually in Canada where I'm not really familiar with this area, where I can actually use the watch itself to actually suggest like a running route for like a 5K or something like that, and it'll just do that on the fly. And then another feature that it has, and this again was kind of surprising here, is that this also comes with their Climb Pro feature. So what this is that when you load in a route, it actually can break out the climbs on your route. So you can basically kind of manage the efforts on each climb so you don't kind of blow up. And then for health feedback, so this comes with quite a bit, including their 5th generation heart rate sensor. It also has a blood oxygen saturation sensor. It tracks your steps, floors climbed. It also has sleep tracking with HRB, as well as their new breathing disturbances feature. And another feature that this has, which again I was not expecting to see in here, is Garmin's training readiness feature. And this is basically gives you an indication of how ready you are for training on a given day. And this is based on your training history as well as your recovery feedback. And this is definitely a bit different than Garmin's body battery feature, which is more of like a daily metric to give you an indication of your current energy level at a given point in a day. It's not necessarily as much about training. And I'll actually have another video about explaining the differences between those two, which I'll have coming up soon. And then this also brings in training status as well, where this gives you an overview of how productive or possibly unproductive your training may be at a given point in time based on your training history. So this isn't just about performance, but it's also about like the variety of training that you're doing, like if you're doing enough zone 2 work as well as enough aerobic work. And then along with that, they've even brought in their endurance score feature, which is Garmin's own little metric for gauging how you may stack up when it comes to sustained long efforts, but not only just long activities, but also multiple activities in a day. And then for running features, it also has wrist-based running power, and it also can collect advanced running dynamics like let's say stride length as well as ground contact time. And then also comes with their hill score feature as well as their pace pro feature. And then for sport profiles, so this comes with quite a few sport profiles here, and it also does include multi-sport and triathlon modes, something that we have never seen with their Venu series before. And then when it comes to external sensors, so this compared to a host of external sensors, including heart rate sensors, as well as cycling power meters. Again, something that we haven't seen before in a Venu series, and this can even pair with Garmin's inReach satellite communication devices. So this is a fascinating watch for a lot of reasons, and they definitely made some interesting choices in terms of what features they brought down from their Fenix and their Foreigner series. But I'd say that most of those features are headliner features, like let's say the maps, the built-in LED flashlight, as well as the sapphire lens. But putting into a square case as well as not having as many physical buttons as their Fenixes and Foreigners, well, that's definitely different. And then also that thin case, well, it's pretty awesome, but it also does come at a compromise of battery life. But I was definitely surprised to see some of the features that they chose to put in here, like let's say Garmin's training readiness feature. And this definitely comes with a lot of the health and training feedback side of things. And I think it could make someone think twice if they're considering an Apple Watch Ultra. Now, the Apple Watch Ultra absolutely can do some things that the X1 can't do. Like, this really is the best smartwatch when it comes to owning an iPhone, where it just has really tight integration with the Apple ecosystem. But one thing that the Ultra can't do is that it can't pair with Android phones, where the X1 works with both Android phones as well as iPhones. And the X1 also does come with a lot more on the health and training feedback side of things, but the Apple Watch Ultra, well, that has built-in LTE. So at first, I was a bit confused about why they chose the Venu name for this, but after thinking about it, I think it does make sense, and I think most of it has to do with that 2-button layout. But the X1 name though, well, I'm not really sure why they chose X1 for this. So they actually have some other products with the X1 naming convention, like let's say some of their hunting products, but I think that just kind of makes it a little bit confusing, at least for their Venu series line of watches, where I think they very well just could have called this the Venu Pro, because that's really what this is. Anyhow, this was something that I was definitely not expecting Garmin to come out with, and I'm gonna have a lot more thoughts on this after using it for a bit and putting it through all the tests that I usually do. So make sure to subscribe to the channel to get a notification when my long-term review of the X1 comes out. And if you did happen to find the information in this video to be useful, do me a quick favor and hit that like button. In the meantime, have fun out there, and we will see you in the next video.